Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel, Simply Maggie, where I teach you all things arm knitting and yarn related and some other DIY stuff here and there. Today I'm going to be showing you how to arm knit this giant, is it giant? I don't know. It's a large square floor cushion. It uses 2 different stitches, so I will teach you how to do those. And it measures approximately 24 inches, 24-inch square, and 5 inches high. So what you're going to need is 2 giant skeins of the Premier Couture Jazz yarn, and this is the new 500 gram ball. It came out last year, but I don't know, I still think it's pretty new. And this is a size 7 jumbo yarn. The other thing you're going to need is a big foam sheet, and I will have this one that I got linked down below, or one similar. This is a medium density square foam sheet, and the reason I chose that density is because you can sit on it and it's soft and comfortable, but it keeps its shape, so it doesn't completely sink down to the floor where you can feel the floor underneath. So as you can see, like, if you can see this, like, I'm trying to squish it and it just squishes a little bit, like it's soft, but it keeps its shape. So you can use, if you want, if you're trying to save a little bit of money, you can use some pillows or comforters or whatever you prefer, but this foam sheet I definitely recommend because it'll look like a perfect square when you're all done and even after you sit on it. First things first, we have our 2 skeins of yarn here. And I have pulled my first strand of yarn from the center of the first skein. And now we're going to cast on our stitches. We're going to knit the top and the bottom of the cushion first, and that requires 16 stitches. So we're going to do the long tail cast on method today, and that requires a long tail. So for 16 stitches, you're going to need about 1, 2, 3, 4 feet of yarn approximately. And then we're going to make our slip knot. To make your slip knot, you drape the yarn over your hand. This is the end here, the other end. So drape it over your hand, pinch it together, insert all of your fingers, twist that away from you, and then you're going to grab the working yarn, which is the yarn that is attached to the skein of yarn. So now what we're going to do is take both the tail and the working yarn. We're going to place it under our ring finger and our pinky on our left hand. And then you're going to take your thumb and index finger and insert it in between the working yarn and the tail. Okay? And then what you're going to do is turn your hand so that the palm of your hand is facing you. Next, what you want to do is take your index finger on your right hand, and you're going to go under this strand, over this one, and pick up this one. So I'll show you how to do that. Go under, over, pick up the strand in the back, and now this is your new stitch. So you're going to just go ahead and place that onto your arm and tighten it up. Then again, put the working yarn and the tail under your ring finger and your pinky. Insert your thumb and your index finger, and then turn your hand, palm of your hand towards you. Take your index finger on your right hand and go under, over, and pick up that strand. So under, over, pick up this strand. This is your new loop, your new stitch, and you're going to go ahead and place that onto your wrist. So now we have 3 stitches, our slip knot, and then we cast on 2 stitches. So we're going to repeat those steps until we have a total of 16 stitches on our arm. So we have our 16 stitches here, and I just want to point out, I get this question a lot, when you're casting on with a long tail cast on method, yes, your tail is supposed to get shorter as you're casting on, but you have to make sure that the tail is wrapped around your thumb, because if it's not, you're going to end up running out of tail way sooner than you're supposed to. So make sure when you're placing the working yarn and the tail around your fingers when you're casting on, that the tail is wrapped around your thumb, not your index finger. The working yarn should be wrapped around your index finger. Okay, so now we have our stitches on our arm and we're going to begin knitting. This whole cushion is knit in 3 pieces and then you sew it together. So we're doing the top and bottom right now. We're going to do the seed stitch, and I'll show you how to do the seed stitch. You're going to hold the working yarn in your right hand, take that first stitch and pull it over and off of your hand while holding on to the working yarn. And this is now your new stitch. So you're going to place that onto your left arm and tighten up as much as you can. Another tip is when you're arm knitting, the stitches are just naturally larger. So if you want to avoid stitches that are too big, holes that are too big, and it just looks really loose, you're going to want to tighten as much as you can while still being able to kind of move this around a little bit, and that'll keep your stitches looking nice. And now that was a knit stitch, and now we want to purl a stitch. So to purl your stitch, hold the working yarn in your left hand and drape it over your right hand, and then you're going to push it behind or underneath that next stitch there while pulling that stitch off of your hand. And I know that sounds tricky, but I'll show you again. So here's your new stitch, and this is a purl stitch. And to explain how the seed stitch works, you're knitting one stitch, then purling one stitch, then knitting one stitch, then purling one stitch, and repeating that across the row. And you're going to do that on every single row. And what will end up happening is you'll be knitting your purl stitches and purling your knit stitches, and that'll all make sense as we keep going here. So the next stitch, since that one was a purl, we're going to make a knit stitch. So to make a knit stitch, again, you hold the working yarn in your right hand, take that next stitch, pull it over and off while holding on to the working yarn, and now you have your new stitch here. You want to place that onto your left hand, just like that, and try not to twist your stitches as you're putting them onto your other arm. So that was a knit stitch, and now we're going to make a purl stitch. So again, to make a purl stitch, you want to hold the working yarn in your left hand, drape that over your right hand, and then push it underneath through that next stitch while pulling that next stitch off of your arm. And now you have your new purl stitch here, and you're going to place that onto your left arm. So now we have a knit stitch, and now we have a purl stitch. And that'll get easier as you go. You'll get the hang of it, and then you'll quickly, be able to go row by row. And that was a purl, so now we need a knit and a purl. And I'm going to go ahead and finish up my row here with my knits and my purls, and then I will show you how to knit row 2. I just want to point out that this does, the cast on row is the hardest row to knit because it's the tightest stitches. So this one might be a little bit tricky, but second row will be even easier. You're going to end every row with a purl, okay? And you're going to start every row with a knit. And I will show you how to knit this row. So like I said, every row starts with a knit stitch. So you're going to hold the working yarn in your left hand, pull that first stitch over and off of your hand. Here's your new stitch, and you're going to place that onto your right arm. Tighten it up as much as you can. Next, we are going to purl a stitch. So you want to drape it over your left hand, push it under, creating your new stitch while pulling that other stitch off of your hand, and then you're going to place that onto your right arm. So you have knit and a purl, and you're just going to keep doing that across the row. Knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. Row 3, you're just going to repeat what you did in row 1 and what you did in row 2. And we're going to knit a total of 16 rows. So we have 2 rows here. So I need to knit 14 more. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I will show you how to end this piece here. Okay, now that we have our 16 rows, we're going to go ahead and bind off, or end, which will end this piece. So to bind off, you're going to knit 2 stitches, 1, 2, and when binding off, you don't want to tighten the stitches too much, because then it would make your piece have one skinnier end, and we don't want that. So now you have your 2 stitches. You're going to take that first stitch, pull it over the second one and off of your hand. So you just bound off 1 stitch. Next, we are going to knit 1, and then you're going to take that first stitch, pull it over the second one and off of your hand, tighten just a little bit. Then you're going to knit 1, and again, bind 1 off, knit 1, bind 1 off, and you're going to continue doing that until you have 1 stitch left on your arm. Okay, and now you have this 1 stitch left on your arm. You can go ahead and pull that off, and then we're going to cut the working yarn and pull it through here. And then you can go ahead and kind of pull on each end, the cast on edge and the bind off edge, and just stretch the stitches so that now you can see this is what the seed stitch looks like. Okay, so this can either be the top or the bottom of your cushion. We're going to go ahead and do that one more time, the 16 stitches and the 16 rows using the seed stitch, and we're going to make the other either top or bottom of the cushion. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I will show you how to make the sides of your cushion. So now what we're going to do is make the sides. So basically for the sides, we're going to be knitting a long skinny scarf and then it'll wrap around the cushion and we'll sew it all on. But what we're going to be doing is just knitting, no purling. So this is going to be super easy, super quick. And we're going to cast on 5 stitches. So just like you did before, you're going to make your slip knot. This time you only need a little bit of a tail because it's only 5 stitches. So make your slip knot, place it on your arm, and go ahead and cast on your stitches. This is your first stitch. And you're going to do it just like you did before. That's 2, 3, 4, and 5. And like I said, we're doing the stockinette stitch, which is all knitting, no purling. So you go ahead and knit all of your rows, and we're going to do a total of 56 rows. To knit, you just hold the working yarn and pull the stitch over your hand, and then you place the stitch on your other arm. Tighten them up. And again, you want to keep your stitches as tight as possible, especially with the stockinette stitch. When you're knitting all your stitches, it can be kind of loose. So tighten those stitches up as much as you can to make them look the best they can. So that was 1 row. See, super quick, super easy. Knit your second row. So just knit 1, place it on your other arm. Knit the next one. Knit the next one and knit the rest of them. So you're just knitting every single stitch here. That was row 2. We're going to continue doing that for all 56 rows. All right, so I have a couple of tips for you. If you do end up losing track of how many rows you've done, there's 2 tips or tricks that I use. One is to count the actual rows that you've done. So these V's here are your stitches. So if you want to see how many rows you've already knit, you go ahead and you count. This is 1 on your arm, 2, 3, 4. You just don't count the first cast on row, the stitches that you cast on. So you always just skip this one here, and you can kind of see the line. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you don't want to do it that way, you can just remember that every row on your left arm is going to be an odd row, because that was the first row that you knit. This was the second row that you knit. So every row on your right arm is going to be an even number. So like I'm on row 4 right now, and then I'm going to go over to my left arm, and this is going to be row 5. I'm going to do all 56 rows, and then again I will come back and show you how to end your side piece. I am on my last row here, row 56. I'm going to go ahead and knit that up. And now I'm going to show you how to bind off again. Knit 1, knit 1 more. Take that first stitch, pull it over the second one and off of your hand. Tighten just a little, knit 1, bind 1 off, knit 1, bind 1 off, knit 1 more, bind 1 more off, and now you're left with your last stitch, and we're going to go ahead and cut the working yarn and just pull that through the last stitch that was on your arm. And you have your end here. Okay, so this is your very long side piece. Now that we are done making our top, bottom, and side pieces, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to sew it all together. We have all of our pieces here, our leftover yarn to sew all the sides together, and it's important that you keep all of your stitches tight when you're arm knitting. That way you have enough leftover yarn to sew it all together. You can use whatever technique you want for sewing it together. I like the mattress stitch because it makes the seam go on the inside of the cushion rather than having a seam on the outside. Okay, so we have our first piece that we're going to be working with here, and what you want to do is kind of look at both sides, see which side you like better, and the side that you like better, have it face out. Okay, so I like this side better, so we're going to put that right on top of our foam sheet here. And before you start sewing or putting this in place, I want you to stretch it as much as it'll stretch. That way it wraps all the way around and meets the other end. And we're just going to put this in place. Put either the cast on edge or the bind off edge at one corner. Hold it in place, and you're going to kind of evenly divide up the stitches for each side. So I have wrapped my side piece all the way around, and what I've calculated is about 13 stitches per side. So if you count, remember how I showed you to count the V's as your stitches? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So that's going to be one side right there. Okay, and then I just divided them up as evenly as I could get them, and then it'll meet around here and you'll sew the ends together. You're going to need your leftover yarn here, and I'm just going to go ahead and leave about 3 or 4 inches here to attach it. say 3 inches. And then go ahead and line it up on that edge. And I just want to make sure I'm going to have enough to go all the way around, and then I'm going to cut it in there, and then I'm going to leave about 5 or 6 inches at the end here. Okay, and that is what you're going to use to sew this top or bottom piece on. This is my cast on edge of my side piece, and then I have a tail right here from the cast on edge of my top piece. I'm going to go ahead and attach these 2 pieces together with a double knot right at the corner. That way you know that that edge there will stay together, those 2 edges. Okay, so I did that. You can go ahead and tuck those in. You don't really have to cut your ends in this project, just kind of tuck them in to your cushion. Okay, so we have that there, and now we're going to begin sewing. So take that piece of yarn that you cut. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is find your first stitch here on this side piece. I'm going to go ahead and insert the yarn that we're using here to sew. And we're going to pull it all the way through until you have just a few inches left over. And then you're going to go over to the top piece here, find your first stitch right here. You're going to put this through just like that. Okay. And again, you're going to go find your next stitch on here, which is right here. I'm going to insert it into that next stitch, pull it all the way through. Then you're going to go over here, find your next stitch here, pull it through. So I'm going to continue doing this along all 4 sides, and then I will show you how to attach the bottom piece. Okay, so we're on our last stitch here on the corner, and move this over here so you can see. Just gonna go same thing right here, make sure I go all the way to the corner. That way I have a nice square shape, and then find the corner piece or stitch here and just pull it through halfway, okay? And then you're gonna pull it through halfway again. I'm running out of tail here. And then you're gonna pull it all the way through to create a knot. Pull it tight. So this is the other end here that was from when I started sewing. So I'm just going to kind of tuck that in here. And then I'm going to knot it up with this piece here that I just tied into a knot. Go ahead and tuck those pieces in. And we're going to use this tail here that was on our bind off edge of the side piece, and we'll use it to sew up this side right here. So we're going to use the tail that I had already stuffed in there, and then we're just going to make a knot, close up that gap there, and I'm just going to do a double knot. Okay, and then go ahead and stuff that in. While holding this in place, flip your foam piece over. So now that we have our piece laid on top, all in place, you get the rest of your leftover yarn, put the sewing yarn along the edge, all 4 sides, to kind of measure how much you need, about a foot. Go ahead and cut that. And now we're gonna sew this last piece on. So we'll start in this corner. I have a tail here. My new yarn, I'm gonna attach it. Find that first stitch on the corner. Insert your new yarn here. Pull it all the way through. And then find your first stitch on this piece. Insert that, pull it all the way through. Go ahead along the edge, just like you did on the bottom of the cushion, and line it all up and sew it all up. Okay, so we are on the last corner here. I have sewn up my entire cushion. Pull it halfway through, pull it halfway through again. Oops. And then pull it all the way through to create a knot. All right, and then we're just gonna tuck in these little ends here. And then what you're gonna do is go along the sides, and wherever you think it needs to be stretched or squished or fixed, you know, whatever needs to be done here. But that is it, you guys. I hope you loved this video and it was helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them down below in the comment section and I will do my best to answer. If you're new here, subscribe. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in my next video.